I am you and you are me. We are all of the same life tree, and whether we like it or not, you and me is all we've got. Black family. Hi, I'm Danny Queen, and welcome to another exciting edition of Color Me Poetry. I'd like to welcome our most illustrious guest, Mr. Tony Browder. Tony is the founder and director of the Institute of Comic Guidance. He's also the publisher of 3 wonderful books published right out here in Washington, D.C. And his new book, we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about the book that he published for his daughter, Atlantis, and it's called My First Trip to Africa. Tony, tell us about your books. Let's just talk about whatever. There's so much that you've done. There's so much that you've contributed in the community, and your books now are national and international.
Sure. Well, we mentioned before about my first publication, From the Browder File.
Yes.
22 essays on the African American experience. The second book is a book that I co-authored with my daughter. The book is entitled My First Trip to Africa, and what it does is document a 13-day trip to Egypt that she made with me in 1989. She was 7 years old at the time, and at the recommendation of a friend of ours, we decided to put these her experiences in book form. And essentially what we did was to make like an extended homework assignment of the book. We did an outline and broke it down into different segments. We did a glossary, and we talked about where she went, who she saw, the experiences that she had, and then what things she saw back in Washington, D.C. that reminded her of things that she had seen in Egypt. So the book is very comprehensive. It's written on the level, on a elementary school level. And as a result of that book, which was published 2 years ago, this February, as a result of the book, my daughter is now lecturing with me. She's lectured in Cleveland, Ohio, in Indianapolis. We'll be going to the University of Tulsa in February. She's going to Detroit, Atlanta. We do book signings. And what we've done is to make this a business enterprise for her. The money from the sale of the book goes into a trust fund to pay for her college tuition.
Yes.
The money that she receives from her honorarium also goes into a trust fund, but she keeps 10% of that money to help underwrite her school-related expenses, trips down to Wild World or to the zoo. She uses her money to pay for those trips. And the idea of the project that we have planned is that when she travels with me to various parts of the world, she's going to write a book about her experiences. We'll be going to West Africa this summer, Ghana, Senegal, Gambia, and the Ivory Coast. And so our second book, which should be out toward the latter part of 93, will focus on the West African and the African American experience. We'll probably be going to Mexico in 94, so we'll do a book on that. And our plans are to have her have at least half dozen books in print by the time she's ready for college, and to have her college tuition in the bank. So
pay for itself.
To pay for itself. You know.
What was her response when she on her first trip to Africa?
She enjoyed it as a child. She was 7 when she went, and she enjoyed having the opportunity to see with her own eyes those things that her daddy had been talking about for all of her life. You know, the Sphinx and the pyramid and the Nubians and Abu Simbel and Ramesses II. So she had an opportunity to see all of these things. And I dare say that she knows more about ancient Nile Valley history and culture than the average adult. And she converses on the subject matter very, very fluently. She has appeared on numerous television and radio programs. National Geographic World did a feature on her last June.
Oh, really?
And she's accepted a number of awards from different government agencies as well as school systems for her work. So what I hope to do is to give her a head start and to instill within her knowledge that she does not have to go to school to get a job. I want her to understand that she is a job, and that we can develop her skills so that she can be her own person.
And her own boss, more than that.
Exactly.
And that's so important for a child. It's so important that we teach children that they can do for themselves at a young age. Because sometimes the things that you're teaching your daughter now, a lot of kids don't get at all.
Exactly.
And some of them don't get until they're grown, or some of them never get it.
Let me share an interesting story with you. we've had a lot of comments from parents regarding this book. One comment came from a woman here in PG County. As a matter of fact, in Bowie, she had a son who was 10 years old in the Bowie public school system, who took my daughter's book to school for a book report. He handed the book report in, and the teacher rejected his book report and reprimanded this child, this young African-American child, was reprimanded in front of his entire class. The teacher told him that the reason why his book report was unacceptable was because it was entitled My First Trip to Africa, and the book report was about Egypt, and everyone knows that Egypt is not in Africa. This is a fifth grade teacher. Yeah. This is a fifth grade teacher. And fortunately, this young man's parents had enough sense and were supportive enough of this child to come in, demand an apology from that teacher in the classroom, had a meeting with the local school representative and the principal, gave them all a lesson in geography and history. And see, you know, what's so vitally important is that most people believe that Egypt is not in Africa. And one of the reasons for that is...
when they take it out. I mean, it's always been there.
Again, but the average person thinks that Egypt is in the Middle East. And
but it's the same continent.
In reality, there's no such place as the Middle East. We've got to ask the question, the Middle East of what? You know, it wasn't, and that led to my writing my latest book, Nile-valley-Contributions to Civilization, because what I wanted to do with this book is to document the African origins of Nile Valley culture and civilization, and to show its impact on Western culture and civilization. Over the last couple of years, there's been a great debate about Afrocentricity and whether or not the Egyptians were black, whether or not the Egyptians were African. And this is nonsense. It's nonsense because of the fact that historians, scholars, and Egyptologists have been manipulating the history of ancient Egypt for hundreds of years, primarily because of the fact, because of the role that Egypt plays in the history of humanity. Egypt contains the oldest documented information regarding the development of history, culture, writing, science, philosophy, religion, engineering, and architecture. The oldest documented evidence exists in Egypt that goes information that can be traced back to over 6,000 years ago. So if we are to accept the notion that we are Negroes and that Negroes have never made any contribution to culture and civilization, as Anothony-Browder said in his book, History of the World, then how can you explain what the Egyptians did 6,000 years ago? So what happened, there had been a concerted effort over the years by scholars to change the history of Egypt, to make the Egyptians what they referred to as dark-skinned Europeans. James Breasted in 1935 published a book,